Rome erupted with celebration in 37 AD when Caligula became emperor. The young ruler, whose real name was Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, seemed destined to bring hope to an empire that had grown weary under the rule of Tiberius. As the son of the beloved general Germanicus, Caligula inherited enormous goodwill from the Roman people. Citizens packed the streets, cheering as the new emperor took power. Many believed a brighter future had finally arrived. During the early months of his reign, Caligula appeared to justify their optimism. He released prisoners, granted bonuses to soldiers, and organized magnificent public games. The crowds adored him. Everywhere he went, he was greeted with applause and admiration. Rome had seen cruel and suspicious rulers before, but this young emperor seemed different. He was energetic, charming, and eager to win the affection of the people. Then suddenly everything changed. Only a few months after taking the throne, Caligula suffered a severe illness. Ancient historians never fully agreed on what happened. Some claimed he nearly died. Others believed the experience affected his mind. Whatever the cause, many Romans noticed a dramatic transformation after his recovery. The generous young ruler began displaying signs of arrogance and cruelty. He demanded unquestioning obedience and treated criticism as treason. Senators who once advised him now feared him. He seemed to enjoy humiliating powerful men in public, forcing respected nobles to endure insults and degradation. Rumors spread that he no longer saw himself as an ordinary human ruler, but as something far greater. As fear slowly replaced admiration, Rome entered a dangerous new era. The emperor's growing obsession with power touched every corner of society. Families whispered warnings behind closed doors, unsure who could be trusted. Among those most vulnerable were the women of Rome's noble families. They did not yet realize it, but many would soon become unwilling participants in the emperor's disturbing pursuit of absolute control. The grand banquets hosted by Caligula quickly became some of the most feared events in Rome. At first glance, they appeared magnificent. Vast halls glittered with gold decorations, expensive marble, and countless oil lamps. Tables overflowed with exotic foods brought from every corner of the empire. Musicians played throughout the evening while servants rushed to satisfy every desire of the emperor and his guests. To receive an invitation was considered a great honor, and many senators eagerly accepted, believing attendance would strengthen their position at court. Yet beneath the luxury lay an atmosphere of dread. No one knew what mood Caligula would be in or who might become the target of his attention. Guests arrived dressed in their finest clothing, but they carried fear behind their smiles. A single careless remark could ruin a career or even cost a life. Ancient historians describe how Caligula often focused his attention on the wives of Rome's most powerful men. During feasts, he reportedly examined noblewomen openly, commenting on their appearance while their husbands sat nearby. Such behavior violated the dignity and customs that Roman society valued, yet no one dared protest. Challenging the emperor was unthinkable. According to several accounts, Caligula sometimes ordered certain women to leave the banquet and accompany him to private chambers. The command of an emperor was not something that could easily be refused. Husbands were left sitting in silence, powerless to intervene. Their military achievements, political influence, and family prestige meant nothing in the presence of absolute power. When the emperor returned, he allegedly treated the situation as entertainment. Stories spread that he mocked both the women and their husbands before the assembled guests. The humiliation was public and deliberate. Caligula seemed to take pleasure in demonstrating that even Rome's most respected families were completely under his control. As these stories circulated throughout the city, banquets once associated with honor became symbols of fear. An invitation from the emperor no longer felt like a reward. For many Roman families, it felt like a threat. As Caligula's reign grew more unpredictable, many Romans began to realize that his actions were not driven solely by desire or impulse. He understood the power of fear, and he knew exactly how to use it. Rather than confronting his political rivals directly, he often targeted the people they loved most. In doing so, he transformed private lives into tools of public control. For Rome's aristocratic families, honor was everything. A family's reputation determined its influence, social standing, and political future. Caligula recognized this weakness, and exploited it relentlessly. If he wished to intimidate a senator, he did not always need to imprison or execute him. Sometimes humiliation was far more effective. Ancient accounts suggest that noblewomen often found themselves caught in the middle of the emperor's power games. Wives, daughters, and sisters of influential men lived under constant anxiety, aware that attracting the emperor's attention could bring disaster upon their entire household. A woman's beauty, grace, or popularity could suddenly become a dangerous liability rather than an advantage. The fear spread throughout Rome's highest circles. Families began limiting public appearances. Social gatherings became tense affairs, where every word and gesture was carefully measured. Parents worried about their daughters attending public celebrations. Husbands feared that any display of wealth or happiness might draw unwanted attention from the emperor. What made the situation even more terrifying was its unpredictability. There were no clear rules. A family could enjoy favor one day and face disgrace the next. Caligula's whims seemed to change without warning, leaving even the most powerful Romans feeling helpless. Many senators commanded armies, governed provinces, and controlled vast fortunes. Yet they found themselves powerless against a ruler who could destroy their reputation with a single command. Through humiliation and intimidation, Caligula reminded Rome's elite that their status existed only because he allowed it. The result was a society paralyzed by fear. Noble families no longer focused on gaining influence or prestige. Their primary concern became survival. In Caligula's Rome, protecting one's honor had become nearly impossible because the emperor himself had turned honor into a weapon. Among the many shocking stories that surrounded Caligula, none generated more controversy than the rumors involving his own sisters. Whether every accusation was true remains a matter of debate among modern historians, but in ancient Rome, these stories spread rapidly and deeply damaged the emperor's reputation. To many Romans, they seemed to confirm that Caligula no longer respected the laws, traditions, or moral boundaries that held society together. Caligula shared a particularly close relationship with his sisters, especially Julia Drusilla. Unlike most Roman women of the time, his sisters enjoyed extraordinary visibility and influence. Their names appeared in official ceremonies, public honors were granted to them, and they occupied a position near the center of imperial power. Such privileges were highly unusual in Roman society and immediately attracted attention. After Drusilla's death in 38 AD, Caligula's behavior became even more alarming to many observers. Ancient writers claimed that he was devastated by her loss and ordered honors that were normally reserved for gods and members of the imperial cult. He reportedly declared her divine, elevating her status far beyond that of an ordinary Roman woman. While grieving relatives often acted emotionally, many Romans viewed Caligula's actions as excessive and disturbing. At the same time, rumors began circulating that his affection for his sisters had crossed accepted boundaries. Historians such as Suetonius and Cassius Dio recorded accusations of incestuous relationships within the imperial family. Whether these claims reflected reality, political propaganda, or exaggeration remains uncertain. Ancient historians often wrote decades after the events, and sometimes relied on gossip as well as fact. Regardless of the truth, the rumors had a powerful effect on public opinion. Romans expected their emperor to embody traditional values. Instead, many saw a ruler who appeared determined to place himself above ordinary morality. The women closest to him became symbols of his growing isolation from Roman society. As the story spread, confidence in Caligula continued to erode, and many citizens began to fear that there were no limits left to his behavior or his ambition. By the final years of Caligula's rule, fear had become a permanent part of daily life in Rome. What had begun as concern among senators and aristocrats gradually spread throughout the city. No one could predict the emperor's next decision, and that uncertainty was often more frightening than any specific punishment. Citizens learned to watch their words carefully, avoid attracting attention, and remain silent when confronted with behavior they found disturbing. For Rome's noble families, life became especially stressful. Wealth and influence, once symbols of security, now seemed like dangerous liabilities. The emperor's attention could fall on anyone at any time. Families who had spent generations building their reputation lived with the constant fear that a single encounter with Caligula could destroy everything they had achieved. Women carried a particularly heavy burden. Mothers worried about their daughters attending public events. Husbands feared for their wives whenever an invitation arrived from the imperial palace. Social gatherings that had once been opportunities to strengthen friendships and alliances became tense occasions filled with suspicion. Behind polite smiles and elegant clothing, anxiety lingered everywhere. The problem was not simply the possibility of humiliation or disgrace. It was the feeling of complete helplessness. Rome's legal system offered no protection against the emperor's personal wishes. Senators who might normally challenge injustice remained silent because they knew resistance could lead to exile, imprisonment, or death. Even military commanders who controlled thousands of soldiers hesitated to oppose him openly. As fear deepened, resentment grew. Powerful men who had once supported Caligula began to question whether Rome could survive under his rule. Members of the Senate whispered their concerns in private. Officers within the Praetorian Guard, responsible for protecting the emperor, became increasingly dissatisfied. Everywhere, people sensed that the empire was approaching a breaking point, yet few dared act. Caligula still possessed enormous authority, and challenging him was extraordinarily dangerous. Rome found itself trapped between fear and desperation. The city that ruled much of the known world was now held hostage by the unpredictable behavior of a single man, and many wondered how much longer this nightmare could continue. By the beginning of 41 AD, the tension that had been building throughout Caligula's reign had reached a critical point. Fear, resentment, and anger had spread through nearly every level of Roman society. Senators felt humiliated, military officers felt ignored, and many ordinary citizens had grown weary of the emperor's unpredictable behavior. Although few dared to speak openly against him, a growing number of powerful individuals had come to believe that Rome could not endure much longer under his rule. Among those who had suffered personal humiliation was Cassius Chaerea, a senior officer in the Praetorian Guard. Ancient historians describe how Caligula frequently mocked and insulted him in public, treating him as a source of amusement. Over time, these insults contributed to a dangerous conspiracy. Chaerea and several other conspirators concluded that removing the emperor was the only way to end the crisis consuming Rome. On January 24, 41 AD, their opportunity arrived. As Caligula moved through a corridor connected to the imperial palace complex, the conspirators struck. The attack was swift and violent. Surrounded by assassins, the emperor was stabbed multiple times before collapsing to the ground. The ruler who had once been welcomed as Rome's golden prince died at the age of only 28. News of the assassination spread rapidly across the capital. Some citizens reacted with shock, while others celebrated quietly behind closed doors. Many people were uncertain about what would happen next. The death of an emperor often led to chaos, and no one knew whether civil conflict might follow. Yet for countless Roman families, Caligula's death represented the end of a long period of fear. The atmosphere of intimidation that had dominated the city began to lift. Although the scars left by his reign remained, many Romans felt they could finally breathe again. Caligula's rule lasted less than 4 years, but its impact endured for generations. His name became synonymous with tyranny, excess, and abuse of power. Whether every ancient story about him was true or exaggerated, his legacy survived as a warning about what can happen when absolute authority falls into the hands of a ruler who believes himself beyond all limits.